This video looks at using photographs to study face proportions. This is an important first step when planning to draw the human face for fashion illustration. It's very important to note every single face is different, so I would say start with one that appeals to you for your illustrations, try it out, see how it works, but first of all we're really just looking for proportions. This face here I have looked at, and when it's printed out and broken down, it breaks down into very typical repeated proportions that a lot of faces have. So important to note here, when you draw a line down through the center of the face, both sides of a real face will never be identical. But in a typical sense, if you draw a line across from the top and the bottom, and then normally roughly in the middle, so if this is half and this is half, that often goes right through the center of the eyes. So that's a very good guess. If you've drawn a head shape and you're working where to put the eyes, halfway down. And I know glancing at it, it looks less than half, but really when you draw it out, top of the head to the bottom of the chin, the halfway mark tends to go through the eyes. So just looking a little bit more closely at the space between the eyes and the chin. So the thirds, as I have drawn them over here, are not exact thirds, but it's worth noting if this is half of the face, the distance between the eyes and the nose here, so center of the nose, is 2 centimeters exactly. And then the distance from the center of the nose to the center of the mouth is 2 centimeters exactly, bringing me down to 4. And then the space from the lips down to the chin, in this case, is 2.5 centimeters. But it's a very rough third, third and third. If the chin here was slightly shorter, if I mark that out here with a ruler, that would still look like quite a balanced face, but with a slightly shorter chin. And then at the top, I've broken the top up into quarters. The top quarter is the hairline, and just below this bottom quarter is where the top of the eyebrows are going. So again, important to note, typical humans all have slightly different proportions, but the task today is to choose a face, and we're going to draw a line down through the center, plot out exactly where the eyes are, and then see how the proportions divide up. And looking at this example of a men's face, then we're still looking at the 50-50 or half proportion between the top of the head to the eyes and from the eyes to the chin. And when we look at the space between the eyes and the chin, we note again it breaks into rough thirds between the eyes and the nose and the mouth to the chin. And looking at the top half of the head, from the eyes to the top of the head, it breaks into rough fifths, with 1/5 being from the eye to the top of the eyebrow, and then the remaining 4/5 taking you roughly to the top of the head. The hairline then is roughly 1.5 of those fifths down, or roughly 1/3 down between the top of the head and the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the proportions on this model's face here. And first of all, I'm going to define a line down through the center of the face. So this here is the top of the head. Center of the eyes, okay, so that is me simply identifying the top of the head, the eyes, nose, lips and chin. And of course here with the nose, I think the center is probably the more natural part to measure when measuring. The face is 18 centimeters long and the eyes are coming in just below the halfway point of 9. So as an estimate, roughly halfway down, in this case slightly more than halfway down, but I'm going to call this a ballpark half and a ballpark half. So I'm going to draw a grid on the side here. Okay, and I'm going to call this over here half, half. Okay, so we've estimated half the length of the head is the top of the head to the eyes, and the other half is from the eyes down to the chin. Glancing at it, I would say this is pretty much a third, a third, a third. Now, if I measure, just to check, we have 1 to almost 3, and then we have 1 to almost 3 and 1 to 3. So pretty much I'm going to call it a third, a third, a third. So I'm going to draw a line down here, and we're going to go 1 third, 1 third, 1 third. Where do the ears start and where do the ears stop? The ear is finishing pretty much at the nose. So obviously if this head is tilted back or tilted forward, these features move around. But to define the top of the ear here, I'm going to draw a line across from the top of the ear. And I'll do the extra lines on this side so we're not confusing on this side. Okay, so I'm noting that the ear is the height of the eyebrow, give or take, and the bottom of the ear is give or take the center of the nose here. Write that in. So noting where to position the ear from the eyebrow down. And then another thing worth noting is where does the eyebrow fit? So if I was to count roughly what this distance is from here up, so I've got just under 2. So if I count just under 2, just under 2, just under 2, just under 2, and just under 2. We have a perfect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections here. So I think that that is actually worth noticing on this particular head, that the height of the eyebrow up from the center of the eye is a 1/5 if you're making a rough guess. So I'll draw that on the side here as well. Actually, I'll draw across from these lines. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going to draw that in on the side as well. There, that is 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, and 1/5. So 1/5 is the eyebrow up from the center of the eye, and that lines up with the top of the ear. So of the remaining things, I suppose working out roughly where the hairline starts would be useful. And again, every human is different to every other human, but I would count that pretty much as 1/5 and a half. So 1.5 fifths here would be the hairline. So I'll just draw a line across there. And then I think another thing that would be really worth finding out is the width of the face or the head in comparison to the length. So quite often people say it is a ratio of 2 to 3. So 2 parts across to 3 parts long. So it'll be interesting to see if I take a measurement. So the measurement from here down is just under 18. A third of that is 6, which is 6, 12, and 18. So we'll call this 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And what we're looking for is 2 of these measurements across. So we're looking for 12 centimeters across. The width of the widest part of the head here is 11.5, and if I include the ears, it is 12.5. Then we are looking at roughly 2 to 3 as a ratio, including the ears. I'll draw that in up here. So we have a third, a third, a third, and I'm going to write in here ratio 2 to 3. Okay, so I just want to define the sides of the face, the sides of the jaw, and what type of head shape that we are looking at. So for the cheekbones down, there is quite a strong angle. And then for the jaw down, again, we've got quite a strong angle here, and then it rounds down for the chin, which goes across at the bottom, and the same story up on the other side. Okay, so back in from those cheekbones, and then the head shape actually goes back out again here. And then nice and round for the top. Now, in order to start drawing the facial features in, we already know where they're going to be placed, but we need to know, more importantly, how far apart or how wide in comparison to each other the features in the face are. Lining the ruler up with the edge of the nose, you'll note how it seems to line up with the inside edge of the eye. Draw a line directly down, lining the two up with each other. In order to determine the width and placement of the lips, square a line up from the edge of the lip. On the left-hand side here, it meets the very centre of the eye. On the right side, however, it meets a slightly different point in the eye, lining up with the side or the inside side of the iris. I would therefore estimate that the centre of the eye is a good reference point. We also need to work out where to place the eyes in terms of width of the eye and placement across that central line. The eye itself here is measuring pretty much 2 centimetres, but the gap between the eyes is measuring 3 centimetres. And then the gap between or beside the eye is coming in at maybe 1.5. So it's kind of complex measurements. I think possibly an easier way to look at it is, where does the eye go maybe between the center of the face and the side of the face. Take the center of the eye here, then from the center to the center of the eye, as in center face to center eye, the ruler is measuring about 2.6 centimeters. And on this side, it is measuring maybe 3. So it's roughly halfway, are centered roughly halfway between the two. Typically, lips are quite flat underneath in the center. The top of the lip curves down in the center. Drawing around the shape of the lips will help you to observe the shape better. Note any height difference between the top of the lip and the bottom of the lip. Often the upper lip is narrower in depth. And then finally, just to observe the eyebrows and where the eyebrows hit. So the eyebrow is coming in further than the inside of the eye. In order to get the angle of the eyebrow on the inside of the eye, line your ruler up with the outside of the lip on that side and then through the edge of the inside of the eye, and that gives you a good indication then as to where the eyebrow begins. To determine the angle of the outside of the eyebrow, if you line the ruler up with the centre of the lip and the outside edge of the eye, and drawing a line up will give you a good indication of where the outside of the eyebrow ends. And just to observe the eyebrow, so I'm going to draw an outline around this one. So this one really comes in 2 sections, quite narrow here on the edge, and coming down here and making a more defined shape. So looking then at the width of the neck. So this model is turned slightly sidewards and I'm looking at drawing her from the front. So a good guideline for the width of the neck is to work from the outside of the iris and to drop the line down. So working with that as a guide, if the iris comes to here, then the neck can be drawn from here, and the same on the other side. So working from the iris, from the neck down. Okay, and then curving that line out. We'll probably widen it a little bit on this side. So to use your eye as a judge, and if you think it just doesn't look right, then adjust it based on your observation. Okay, so I'm slightly wider on this side, and I think now that is a more balanced looking neck.